So we were discussing the system, right? Traditionally, we had a look at the system in business, the business perspective, right? So there we have we have input and the process and the output line, right? So there we were not that much concentrate on. We don't pay our attention on whom. We don't worry about our suppliers or our customers, like. But when it comes to BPM, in the BPM related systems, we pretty much concentrate on our suppliers as well as our customers, right? Here in this diagram, you would see when it comes to the BPM system is pretty much similar to this one, right? We have vendors, or in other words, you can say suppliers. They are outside of the organization. They are outside, right? They are in outside of the organization boundaries, right? So, but these people provide us inputs, right? Maybe raw material, maybe capital, maybe labor, maybe any sort of input that we get from our suppliers. So within the organization, what do we have? We have these different processes, right? So in the BPM, do we really concentrate on these different functional areas like manufacturing and production, finance and accounting, sales and marketing, and human resource, like? So this is the traditional way we look at, right? We are not going to concentrate on that functional area, but we have the processes. They may be bypassing both, most of these functional area. If you, for example, right, if you take product development process, right? So in that, what happens? So where that that process starts from where? From the marketing people, right? So once they get the information from their customers asking for new products, so of course that process starts. So that information they may take to the product development, and they develop a product. Then they give that idea to the develop product to the concept to the production people. They produce the real goods, right? And the sales people may take it to the market line. So that is the whole process, right? Integrating most of these functional areas, like, so that in the business process, more or less, this functional orientation is eliminated. We do not really worry about the functional orientation. Instead, what do we have? We have process orientation, right? So that is the difference between this process orientation and the functional orientation. Right? So as you have witnessed on the screen, right? So in the BPM, there is a transition from functional orientation to the process orientation. So that here we say in business as a system is the idea of treating a business as a system is so simple. especially today when it is so uh, especially today when it is so commonplace that it is hard for some to understand how important the idea really is. System thinking stresses linkages and relationship and flows, right? Uh, so that when it comes to this for treating a business as a system, it may be an idea of so simple, especially today when it is a commonplace, but that is hard for some to understand how important that idea really is. But business as a system somewhat difficult for us to understand why systems thinking stresses linkages and relationship and the flows like. So what are the linkages of these different functional areas and the relationship of these different activities which taken place within the organization and the flows of information, etc. Right? It emphasizes that any given employee or unit or activity is part of a large entity, and that ultimately those entities working together are justified by the results they produce. So in this system, emphasize that any given employee or the unit or the activity is part of the large entity, and that ultimately those entities working together or the justified by the results they produce. So that any system you take it, so we have the suppliers, we have input, there is a kind of a process or the production process if you wish, and then we have the output. Output is given to going for the customer. So that is the end result, right? The end product we do, right? So that is the justification we have in this whole process, right? So in this background, right? So when it comes to the competitive advantage, the groundwork for the current emphasis on comprehensive business processes was laid by Michael Porter in 1985 by his book Competitive Advantage, creating and how to create in and sustain superior performance, right? So that until 1985, right? So that we were not that much concerned on these business processes. Like Porter is the very first author with his book Competitive Advantage to introduce us. What does it? I mean, what does it mean by the business process? Like here we say, Porter is probably the best known for his early book Competitive Strategy, published in 1980. But it's in competitive advantage that he lays out his concept of value chain, a comprehensive collection of all of the activities that are performed to design, produce, market, deliver, and support the product line. Right? So, what is this value chain of Porter? So, there are two concepts he put forward, right? Industry value chain and the firm value chain, right? And in this figure 1.2 shows the diagram that Porter has used on several occasions to illustrate the generic value chain, right? So here we have with regard to the organization, right, firm value chain. So he basically divided these activities which taken place in the organization like primary activities and support activities or the secondary activities. What are these primary activities? As you can see on the screen, we have inbound logistics. What is by inbound logistics? When we acquire the raw material from our suppliers, right? From that to bring these raw materials to our warehouses within the organization, or that these activities we call inbound logistics, right? So that operation, most probably, that is with the production process within the organization. Outbound logistics, from the production plant to deliver to the customer, all the activities comes under outbound logistics. And again we have marketing and sales and the after sales service. So all these are primary activities. Why do we call them primary activities? Anyone?
Because they are the main activities involved in the operation. Like without them, we can't do the operations.
Okay, very good. So they are directly related with the production process of the product or the service, right? So I mean, without that, we simply can't have the product or the service line. So that's why we call them primary activities. Next, we have support activities or the secondary activities. So what are they? The firm infrastructure or the resources we have, and the human resources, and the information technology or technology development, and the procurement, right? So all these are comes under support activities. So after performing all these, there are margins added to the production process by each and every activity of it. So the next what the company does is they keep a margin as their profit. So that is the price of the product or the service at the market. So collectively all these we call it price of the product or the service at the market, right? So that right in this Porter's value chain, here they say, although Porter doesn't show it on the diagram, you should assume that some primary activity is initiated on the lower left of the diagram when a customer orders the product, and ends on the right side when the product is delivered to the customer. So that in this Porter's value chain, we can't see customers or the suppliers, suppliers or the customers. So the extreme left-hand corner, what do you find? You probably would have the customer, your suppliers line, right? So here they say in the diagram, when the customer orders a product and ends in the right side of the product is delivered to the customer, right? So that there is a kind of a initially at the very beginning I told you, in any process, right? So there is a triggering event, right? So what do I mean by the triggering event? In this according to this value chain, the customer order, right? So when the customer asks for a product or a service, that is the triggering event. Starting from that, they collect these raw materials, and that goes through the production process, and that is the market, and the marketing and sales activities are performed, and the after sales services are provided, and the customer is satisfied, right? So but on this diagram itself, we can't see, right, that suppliers and the customers. Of course, it may be a bit more complex with marketing simulating the customer in order and service flowing, service following up the delivery of the order with various services. But those details are avoided in the diagram. Figure 1.2 simply focus on what happens between the order and the final delivery. On the value chain or large scale business process that produces the product. Here we have only we focus our attention on what? order and the final delivery. But in the value chain or the large scale business process, there are that is somewhat more greater details of it, right? Here, when it comes to the firm value chain, that is again by Porter in 2000. Sorry, that is again 1980s. Like, so I have what you call the extracted from the louder, right? Here, this primary activities he mentioned: inbound logistics, operations, outbound logistics, sales and marketing, and after sales service line, right? So diagrammatically he has mentioned it. And when it comes to secondary, for the supportive activities like administration, human resources, information system, procurement, finance, and accounting, right? So when it comes to the single value chain, so what's important to Porter's concept is that every function involved in the production of the product and all of the support services from information technology to the accounting should be included in a single value chain. So that in the production process, what happens is we can't take these functions in isolation. So they has to be performed in one single value chain, right? He says that involve production in the product and all other supportive activities for information technology to the accounting should be included in a single value chain. It's only by including all of the activities involved in production, involved in producing the product, that a company is in position to determine exactly what the product is costing and what margin the firm achieves when it sells the product. So that if we omit any of these activities, what happens? We can't do the proper costing of the product or the service line. So that each and every activity of this process has to be taken into consideration before you come to price it, right? So that's what it says. It's only by including all the activities involved in the producing the product that company is in position to determine exactly what the product is costing and what margin the firm achieves when it is sells the product line, right? So in that sense, right, we now focus our attention on process and sub-process, right? So what do you mean by process, by the way? Yes, we can simply say collection of interrelated activities, right? It's a process. And when Porter's concept of value chain is applied to business processes, a different type of diagram is produced, right? It says when Porter's concept of value chain is applied to business processes, a different type of diagram produced, right? So that since Porter does not concentrate on suppliers and customers, but in business process, we have to concentrate in these two ends and various other aspects of the organization. That gives a somewhat different picture. So here they say figure 1.3 illustrates the value chain of the business process that cuts across 5 departmental functional boundaries represented by the underlying organizational chart. So what are these 5 departmental or the functional boundaries you find here? Yes? Anyone? Yes? Yeah, anyone? In this diagram, you would see here we have design a new product, produce product, deliver product, right? Right. So these are the main activities in the value chain, but in organization perspective, we have different functional areas like engineering, production, information technology, finance, human resources, marketing, sales and support, etc. But these functional areas are not that important here. What is important here? Design new project, design new product. So that is the one process, starting from engineering to production, information technology, finance, human resources to the marketing, combining all these different functional departments, right? So in the business process manager, we concentrate on the processes, not functional areas, right? For example, we can take design a new product, and next one, produce the product. That is again starting from the engineering, production, information technology, finance and human resources, right? So that is the value chain, right? Including this. Then again, we can take a process like deliver product, right? That is again process, right? So here we have the departments involved: production, information technology, finance, human resources, marketing, and sales and support, right? From all these processes are target whom? The customer, right? So that once we completed the design new product, what happens? We may provide that to the customer. So in return, what do we get? We get a feedback from the customer, right? New need identified, right, from the customer. So once we identify the new need, what happens? The new design, we do a new product design for the customer, right? That's how most of the products you find today came into effect, right? So what I mean, in actual sense, do we really want to buy the stuff we buy today? Anyone? Do we really want to buy this number of products in the market? Anyone? Danuka? Do you want to buy all the products available in the market? Yes? Yes or no? Anyone?
No, sir. It depends on our needs and wants.
I mean, a need is created by whom? Basically what happens, we have limited number of needs, right?
Yes.
Basically we need to eat something, we need some sort of a shelter, and we need some kind of clothing to cover our nudity, right? And for our betterment, for the not to be sick, right? We need some kind of a medication. These are simple needs we have. But what happens is in the marketers are creating so much of wants for us. Isn't that so?
Yes,
right?
with varieties.
We actually have experienced it when we were locked in, right? With this, what you call that, the COVID-19 crisis. What happens? Do we have such a great number of needs in our life? No, I don't think so. Right? So that is one of the biggest what you call that, the experience we have had in this crisis period. But most of these wounds are created by the marketers, right? Here we have so that once they identify the customer new need, they design a new product and release it to the market, right? So that is what happened. So and again, when it comes to deliver products, they carry out the promotions with regard to customers, and the customer order and make the payment, and once they do that, they tend to deliver it, right? And next comes the after sales service line. So once they buy a product, what happens is, so that we have to provide the service for the customer, right? So that is again important. So here they say the boxes shown within the process arrow are sub-processes. So that this darker color arrow, right? You find what sub-processes, right? So design new products, produce products, deliver products. All these are sub-processes. The sub-processes are initiated by the input from the customer. So when it comes to these sub-processes, when that is started with the input from the customer line, right? And the process ultimately produces an output that is consumed by the customer. So that the customer provides some sort of initiation, what you call the input for the initiation. So that process ultimately produces an output that is consumed by the customer. As far as I know, this type of diagram was first used by another management system theorist, Gary Ramler, in 1984. And this diagram started of using in 1980s by the management system theorist Gary Ramler, right? And so when it comes to Ramler, it says eventually Ramler and his colleagues established a specialized discipline that is usually termed human performance technology, or HPT. Ramler's specific focus was on how to structure processes and activities to guarantee that employees be the managers, salespeople, or production line workers would function effectively. The Ramler's focus was on and the employees would function effectively. So in order to make these employees effective, Ramler focus his attention on how to structure these processes and activities. In the 1960s and 1970s, he relied on behavioral psychology and systems theory to explain his approach. But during the course of 1980s, he focused increasingly on the business process model. In 1960s to 70s, like he was pretty much concentrated on behavioral psychology to explain his system theory. But during the course of 1980s, he focused increasingly on the business process model, right? So in the 1980s, it was started what? What started in 1980s? Can someone tell us what started in 1980s? Yes, started of adapting BPRO, the business process re-engineering, right? Here we say later in the 90s, Hamler and Davenport would exhort companies to change and offered lots of examples about how changes had led to improved company performance. Similarly, IDS here would offer software engineering methodology for the process change. Ramla and Brack offered a systematic, comprehensive approach designed for business managers, right? So by the 1980s with the BPR, so the Ramla and Brack offered systematic, comprehensive approach designed for the business managers. The book that Ramland Beck wrote that he did not launch the BPR movement in the 90s. The popular book written by the Hammer and Davenport launched the re-engineering movement. But Ramland Beck's book does not mention the BPR, but the Hammers and Davenport launched the term engineering, re-engineering, right? Re-engineering movement. Once managers become interested in re-engineering, however, and began to look around for practical advice about how to actually accomplish process change, they frequently arrived at improving performance, right? So that what really happened is business process engineering. Can someone tell us? Yes, in 1980s, once they introduced BPR, what really happened? Anyone? You know that when it comes to any organization, right? So we would see a organization, if we draw a organization structure like, so you would see the pyramid shape. The top level is quite narrow and the middle level quite broader, and to the bottom level, or if you want, I can say strategic level, less number of employees. In the middle level, right? Level management, somewhat broader, and the tactic, what to call that, operational level, it is quite heavily, what you call that, populated with the employees. So by introducing the BPR, what they have done was they have eliminated, they shrink this organizational structure, the middle layers, right? Lower and the middle layers. So by get rid of additional employees, right? That was the thing that occurs in 1980s with the BPR, with all this re-engineering effort. However, and began to look around for practical advices about how to actually accomplish process change. They frequently arrive at improving performance, right? So that in the really happens is, right? So they mainly concentrate on customer, competition, cost, customer, competition, and the change line, right? So that as far as customers are concerned, what are their priorities? To give him enhanced value, right? They pretty much concentrate on improving the value to their customers, right? Enhancing the value to the customer. As far as competition is concerned, so what is their obligation? So to meet it successfully, right? With the BPR initiatives with regard to the competition of the company, what they really want to do is to meet it successfully, right? When it comes to competition. So to change it strategically, right? To manage it strategically. That means to change management, to do it in strategical manner. So when it comes to cost, it is eminent to reduce it efficiently. Right, most of the BPR initiatives in America 1990s onwards were mainly concentrated on reducing the cost and improving the efficiency and effectiveness. So in this diagram, right, it is explained to us the business process re-engineering life cycle. You know the life cycle already, right? So what really occurs in that lifespan of a process life, right? So that when it comes to business process re-engineering life cycles, we have different activities, right? So first one is visioning, right? In visioning, what do? we define corporate visions and the business goals. So starting from that thing, right, in the BPM all the time, what kind of initiative that would be? We call that top to bottom approach we have, right, starting from the very top level and come to the lowest level. So the who who are the people in the organization, what you call that, formulate vision and the goals of the organization, the very highest management, right? So they are the visionaries of the organization. That's what we say in the vision is define corporate vision and the business goals. Like the next activity would be, right, identifying what? Identify the business processes to be re-engineered. So they have to identify the business processes which has to be re-engineered. Then comes the analyzing. So analyze and measure the existing process. Why do we analyze and measure the existing processes? Anyone? Yeah, why do we analyze and measure existing processes? Can someone tell us why we analyze and measure existing process?
To re-engineer it in a better way?
Very good, Amit. Without analyzing and measuring, can we identify any of the shortcomings of the existing system or the existing process?
No.